The oppressive, humid summer air of August 6, 1945, at precisely 8:30 a.m., hung heavy within the stark, fluorescent-lit confines of the underground bunkers nestled beneath Tokyo's Imperial General Headquarters. A nation embroiled in a relentless conflict for nearly 4 years felt the palpable weight of its protracted struggle. Within these subterranean chambers, staff officers, their khaki uniforms visibly stained with perspiration, hunched diligently over vast communication boards. They meticulously placed pins on colossal wall maps, charting the ever-diminishing territorial expanse of the Japanese Empire. General Korechika Anami, Japan's esteemed war minister, moved through the corridors with an unwavering composure, characteristic of a seasoned soldier who had never experienced the bitter taste of defeat. At 58 years of age, his deeply etched, weathered countenance exuded the profound self-assurance of a man utterly convinced of Japan's preordained divine destiny. The customary morning briefing was anticipated to unfold without incident. Routine overnight dispatches from various garrison commanders positioned across the home islands were expected, alongside vital updates concerning the immense Ketsugo defense preparations. These elaborate strategies were meticulously designed to inflict such prohibitive costs upon any American invasion force that the adversary would inevitably be compelled to seek terms for peace. However, an unsettling anomaly presented itself. The communication board designated for the Chugoku military district remained ominously blank. There were no morning reports emanating from Hiroshima's 2nd General Army Headquarters, nor any fresh intelligence from the approximately 400,000 civilians and military personnel residing in Japan's 8th largest metropolis. The radio operators, with increasing agitation, twisted their dials, but instead of the familiar reassuring crackle of field reports, they were met only with an unnerving silence, pure static. "Sir," a youthful communications officer stammered, beads of sweat glistening on his forehead despite the subterranean coolness. "We have completely lost all contact with Hiroshima. Every military frequency, every civilian radio channel. Everything went silent at approximately 8:15 this morning. General Anami," his dark eyes narrowed perceptibly, "in the crucible of 4 years of total war, entire urban centers simply did not vanish from the communication grid, especially not cities housing significant military headquarters. And certainly not cities that, just hours prior, had been relaying routine defensive preparations." The chilling question reverberated through the bunker. What earthly force could instantaneously silence a population of 340,000 souls? We ask you to stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. To fully grasp the gravity of the unfolding situation, one must endeavor to comprehend the intricate mindset of the 6 preeminent individuals who, in August 1945, effectively held the destiny of Japan within their grasp. They collectively referred to themselves as the Supreme War Council, or more colloquially, the Big Six. And with an almost unshakable conviction, they genuinely believed they possessed the ultimate keys to securing victory, even as squadrons of American B-29 bombers systematically reduced their cities to smoldering ash night after night. This formidable council comprised General Anami, Admiral Soemu Toyoda, General Yoshijiro Umezu, Prime Minister Admiral Kantaro Suzuki, Foreign Minister Shigenori Togo, and Navy Minister Admiral Mitsumasa Yonai. 6 men, upon whose decisions the lives of 70 million people precariously depended. What rendered their confidence so perilously misplaced, however, was their possession of secrets that they were convinced the Americans could not possibly fathom. Since 1940, Japan had been engaged in its own clandestine and intense race to develop an atomic bomb. This monumental endeavor was divided into 2 distinct programs: the Army Sainigo Project, meticulously overseen by the brilliant Dr. Yoshio Nishina, and the Navy SFGO program, under the capable leadership of Dr. Bansaku Arakatsu. These were far from amateurish undertakings. Dr. Nishina, in particular, stood as one of the world's foremost nuclear physicists, a distinguished scholar who had previously collaborated with the legendary Niels Bohr in Copenhagen. His profound understanding of the theoretical underpinnings of atomic fission was virtually unparalleled. And that profound knowledge had imparted a critical insight. The actual construction of atomic bombs was an endeavor bordering on the impossible. The sheer complexity of uranium enrichment alone demanded industrial facilities of a scale utterly beyond human imagination. This required massive electromagnetic separation plants, thousands of tons of uranium ore, and an astronomical consumption of electrical power that would effectively drain the resources of entire geographical regions. Japan's leading scientific minds had meticulously calculated that even the formidable United States, with its colossal and entirely untouched industrial base, could realistically produce, at most, perhaps 1 or 2 atomic weapons, conceivably 3 if their project had commenced significantly earlier than anyone suspected. Thus, when the initial, fragmented, contradictory, and almost unbelievable reports began to filter in during that fateful morning, the military leaders summarily dismissed them. Their confidence was rooted in the deeply held belief that they possessed superior, insider knowledge. The first somewhat coherent report from a reconnaissance plane stated, "A small number of B-29s attacked Hiroshima with a new type of bomb. Considerable damage observed." Admiral Toyoda, the chief of the Naval General Staff, barely bothered to lift his gaze from his strategic maps. "Considerable damage from a mere handful of bombers," he mused dismissively. He had, after all, personally survived the devastating B-29 raids that had already obliterated 42 major Japanese cities. He concluded it was most likely a highly concentrated incendiary attack, suggesting only that the Americans are getting more efficient. Yet, as the hours inexorably ticked by, the incoming reports grew progressively more bizarre and unsettling. Train schedules to Hiroshima had been indefinitely suspended. Military communications with the city remained entirely severed. Most disturbing of all, a weather reconnaissance plane reported witnessing an unprecedented phenomenon. A colossal, mushroom-shaped cloud ascending nearly 40,000 feet into the stratosphere. Then came President Truman's momentous radio announcement, transmitted via shortwave and intercepted by Japanese monitors. 16 hours ago, an American airplane dropped 1 bomb on Hiroshima, an important Japanese army base. That bomb had more power than 20,000 tons of TNT. It is an atomic bomb. A profound and deafening silence descended upon the Supreme War Council meeting room. General Anami eventually broke the stillness, his voice imbued with the carefully cultivated calm of a career military officer. "The Americans are engaged in psychological warfare," he declared. "Even if they have developed some form of atomic device, the technical requirements make mass production impossible. Our own research confirms this." Admiral Toyota nodded grimly in agreement. If the Americans possessed an arsenal of such weapons, they would have used them months ago. This is clearly a desperate gambit, perhaps their only such device. What these leaders could not possibly have known was that their very scientific expertise had, paradoxically, become their greatest vulnerability. Their extensive atomic research had indeed illuminated the immense difficulty of the task, but it had also, tragically, blinded them to American industrial capabilities that simply defied their comprehension. The Manhattan Project had mobilized an astounding 130,000 workers across multiple states, consumed more electricity than entire nations, and represented the largest secret industrial undertaking in the annals of human history. The Japanese military leaders were making critical decisions based on what they understood to be technically possible. Yet they were confronting an adversary that had fundamentally redefined the very boundaries of possibility itself. As August 6th transitioned into the early hours of August 7th, and as the first horrific details began to arrive from the intrepid investigation teams rushing towards Hiroshima's desolate ruins, these 6 men clung to their ingrained certainties with the desperate tenacity of drowning sailors clutching at debris. They remained utterly unaware that their entire world was on the precipice of an irreversible transformation. What transpired next would not merely shatter their military strategy, but would fundamentally redefine their very understanding of warfare itself. The very fabric of strategic conflict was undergoing a profound redefinition. Dr. Yoshio Nishina, a luminary in the realm of theoretical physics, possessed an almost singular grasp of the potential devastation inherent in an atomic bomb, at least in its conceptual form. Yet the vast expanse between abstract understanding and tangible experience remained unbridged. This formidable chasm was traversed by Nishina on August 7, 1945. His 11-hour train journey from the bustling metropolis of Tokyo to the desolate remnants of Hiroshima unfolded through a landscape that increasingly defied ordinary perception. For many miles preceding the city's approach, Nishina observed trees denuded of their foliage, telephone poles fractured as effortlessly as kindling, and an unfamiliar pungent odor that assailed his respiratory senses. Then the locomotive ground to an abrupt halt. The railway tracks ahead had been contorted into impossible helical shapes by forces utterly beyond human comprehension. Nishina proceeded on foot for the remaining 5 miles into what had once been the vibrant city of Hiroshima. Nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for the horrifying spectacle that confronted him. Structures had not merely collapsed, they had been utterly incinerated. Ethereal human shadows were indelibly etched into concrete surfaces, the spectral outlines of individuals who had been commencing their daily routines when 8 to 15 a.m. irrevocably became the final moment of their existence. The hypocenter, the precise point where the bomb had detonated 1,800 feet above the ground, manifested as a perfectly circular expanse of utter devastation, stretching for miles in every direction. Most profoundly disturbing were the survivors. Nishina, a man whose life had been devoted to the relentless pursuit of scientific enlightenment, was now confronted with the harrowing reality of radiation sickness, a phenomenon previously confined to the pages of theoretical physics journals. Victims exhibited skin literally detaching from their bodies, individuals convulsing with vomited blood, and hair falling out in copious clumps. These were the walking dead, stumbling through ruins that resembled the desolate surface of an extraterrestrial world. Nishina's hands trembled visibly as he conducted measurements with his Geiger counter, its frantic clicking intensifying with every step closer to ground zero. This was no mere explosive device. It was the fundamental energies of the cosmos unleashed upon a human settlement. Every preconceived notion he held regarding the limitations of atomic weaponry had been proven utterly, catastrophically erroneous. After 2 or 3 paragraphs, ask us to stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Meanwhile, in the imperial capital of Tokyo, the Supreme War Council was poised to receive intelligence that would render the Hiroshima catastrophe a mere precursor. At precisely 11:02 a.m. On August 9th, as the Big Six finally convened to deliberate upon the reports from Hiroshima, an aide burst into the conference chamber with a dispatch that instantly drained the color from every visage present. Nagasaki has been attacked with another atomic bomb. A chilling silence descended upon the room, broken only by the distinct clatter of Admiral Toyoda's pen falling onto the polished mahogany table. Another such device, unleashed just 3 days later. In that singular terrifying instant, every assumption to which the Japanese military leadership had desperately clung disintegrated like brittle paper consumed by flames. If the Americans possessed 2 atomic bombs, they could conceivably possess 3 or 10 or even 100. The entire strategic bedrock of Japan's defensive posture. To inflict such grievous casualties upon the invading American forces that they would be compelled to negotiate had just been rendered utterly meaningless. Why would America contemplate a costly invasion when they could simply obliterate Japanese cities one by one, methodically erasing them from existence until nothing remained but a radioactive wasteland? Yet, even confronted with this apocalyptic reality, General Anami remained steadfast in his vision of an honorable demise over a dishonored survival. Would it not be wondrous? He inquired, his voice imbued with an unsettling poeticism, for this entire nation to be destroyed like a beautiful flower? The other council members gazed at him in stunned, disbelieving silence. Here stood a man so deeply committed to the samurai warrior's code that he would willingly choose national extinction over national capitulation. In his profound conviction, there was an inherent purity, an aesthetic perfection in Japan vanishing in a blaze of atomic fire rather than submitting to foreign subjugation. However, an unyielding reality was about to intrude in the most devastating manner imaginable. On August 10th, Japanese military forces apprehended an American fighter pilot named Marcus McDilda, who had been shot down 2 days after the Hiroshima bombing. Under intense interrogation, which regrettably included torture, McDilda furnished information that would finally shatter the resolute resistance of the Japanese military command. The critical issue was that McDilda possessed absolutely no knowledge concerning atomic bombs. He was a conventional fighter pilot who had never received any briefing whatsoever on nuclear weaponry. But facing excruciating torture and desperate for his own survival, he recounted to his captors what he believed they desired to hear, embellishing every conceivable detail he could conjure. The Americans, McDilda falsely asserted, possessed in excess of 100 atomic bombs. They were capable of deploying 3 such devices per day. Tokyo, he claimed, would be the next target, followed by Kyoto, and then Osaka. Every major Japanese city, he chillingly predicted, would be annihilated within a matter of weeks. None of these assertions were true. In actuality, the United States possessed precisely 0 atomic bombs remaining in its arsenal. The subsequent weapon would not be ready for deployment until late August, and its production was agonizingly slow. Yet, McDilda's desperate fabrications contained just enough technically plausible detail to be deemed credible by interrogators who were frantically grasping for any shred of information about this incomprehensible new weapon. When McDilda's fabricated intelligence reached the Supreme War Council, it landed with the force of a final, crushing blow. War Minister Anami, the very man who had spoken so poetically about national destruction, now stood before his colleagues, the immense weight of absolute defeat discernible in his voice. "One atomic bomb," he read from the interrogation report, "could destroy 6 square miles, an effect equivalent to 2,000 B-29s, each armed with 300 conventional bombs. The Americans appear to have 100 atomic bombs. They could drop 3 per day. The next target might well be Tokyo." The room was enveloped in a profound silence, broken only by the labored breathing of Admiral Suzuki. These men had commanded millions of soldiers, had orchestrated campaigns across the vast expanse of the Pacific, and had never truly experienced defeat. But they were now confronted with a weapon that rendered their military expertise as utterly obsolete as samurai swords in the age of machine guns. Still, incredibly, they remained deadlocked. 3 votes for immediate surrender. 3 votes to persist in fighting, even in the face of atomic annihilation. It would require an intervention utterly unprecedented in the annals of Japanese history to break this intractable stalemate, to break the impasse. Just before the stroke of midnight on August 9, 1945, an event transpired that stood unparalleled in over a millennium of Japanese history. Emperor Hirohito, the deified sovereign traditionally detached from the exigencies of earthly governance, entered a conference chamber and personally resolved a governmental deadlock. The scene was both unprecedented and profoundly surreal. The 6 esteemed members of the Supreme War Council, alongside Baron Kichiro Hiranuma, assumed formal kneeling positions around a gleaming, polished table. The emperor, diminutive in physical stature, yet imbued with the immense weight of divine authority, uttered pronouncements that would not merely conclude a global conflict, but irrevocably alter an entire martial philosophy. "I have given profound consideration to the exigencies both domestically and internationally," Hirohito stated, his voice barely a whisper. "We must endure the unendurable and suffer what is insufferable." In that pivotal moment, Japan's highest military echelons confronted a momentous dilemma: the stark choice between preserving national honor and ensuring the nation's very survival. Some prominent figures, such as Prime Minister Suzuki, pragmatically embraced this new, harsh reality. Conversely, others, including General Anami, chose to adhere to a radically different, more traditional path. On August 15th, mere hours prior to the Emperor's imperial broadcast announcing surrender, General Anami performed the solemn ritual of seppuku within the confines of his own residence. He departed from life precisely as he had lived, guided by a warrior's code that the cataclysmic advent of atomic weaponry had rendered utterly obsolete. His valedictory verse, inscribed in his own blood, articulated unwavering fealty to the emperor and profound regret that he could no longer render service. he never acknowledged that the world had been irrevocably transformed. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Yet, perhaps the most profoundly tragic figure was Admiral Toyota, who had so confidently asserted that the Americans could not possibly possess a multitude of atomic bombs. Following the cessation of hostilities, when the vast magnitude of the Manhattan Project was finally unveiled, and when he comprehended that American industrial might had achieved what Japanese scientific minds had deemed utterly impossible, Toyota reportedly spent countless hours gazing at photographs depicting the desolation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, enveloped in a complete and utter silence. The atomic bombings did far more than simply bring World War II to its conclusion. They signified the dramatic demise of an entire military ideology founded upon the tenets of honor, supreme sacrifice, and conventional methods of warfare. Modern military strategists now scrutinize this historical narrative not merely as a chronicle of past events, but as a potent warning against the perils of cognitive blindness within leadership. It illustrates how specialized expertise can paradoxically become a conceptual cage, and how deep-seated professional knowledge can obstruct leaders from discerning revolutionary shifts in the strategic landscape. Today, as humanity confronts its own succession of technological revolutions, encompassing artificial intelligence, sophisticated cyber warfare, and advanced space-based weapon systems, the compelling account of Japan's military command in August 1945 retains a poignant and acute relevance. It serves as a stark reminder that the most catastrophic military failures often originate not from formidable external adversaries, but from an internal inability to adapt to novel realities. The Japanese military leadership struggled to accept the devastating potency of America's atomic bomb because they had convinced themselves of its inherent impossibility. Their advanced scientific understanding, their ingrained professional expertise, and their profound cultural confidence all, ironically, transformed into instruments wielded against them. Sometimes the most insidious enemy is the unshakable certainty that one fully comprehends the established rules of the game, even when those rules have already been fundamentally and permanently altered by another player.